Power on.
The following is a presentation of the Sovryn Tech podcast feed.
From days of long ago, from uncharted regions of the universe, comes a legend. The legend of Sovryn Tech, podcast of the universe. A mighty tech show, loved by anarchists, feared by authoritarians. As Sovryn Tech's legend grew, peace settled across the galaxy. On planet Earth, a union of egoists was formed. Together with the open source, retro gaming, and liberty-loving communities, they maintained peace throughout the universe. Until a new horrible menace threatened the galaxy. Sovryn Tech was needed once more. This is the podcast of super host Dr. Brian Sovryn. Specially trained and sent out into the galaxy to bring back Sovryn Tech, podcast of the universe.
Woo! As Keith would say, it's time for the big guy. That's right, it is the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, Dr. Brian Smarter Than Your Ass Sovryn, here for another Sovryn Tech, episode 491. And as I said last week, man, it is good to be back, baby. It is good. It feels good. It feels right. This is how it is done in podcasting, folks. What was that? Get a little Star Wars in there. This is podcasting. Oh, man. We've got a lot to get into in this episode. Really appreciate a lot of the comments, feedback from episode 490 of Sovryn Tech. And if you're wondering about how is this episode 490 and how is this episode 491? Well, if you're a Sovryn Tech patron at patreon.com/SovrynTech, you'd know because we talked about it on our Patreon exclusive Wednesday Q&As, which also include being in the Patreon exclusive Discord channel. So let's have no more shilly-shally or dilly-dally, and let's get into the foreplay with what's going on, the little stories happening in the tech world or the news in general at times. And, you know, last week we opened up talking quite a bit about Apple. I mean, we hit everybody, and we're going to hit everybody here again. don't you fret. All right. We'll get to Amazon. We'll get to Google. But why don't we go ahead and open up with a little more Apple talk, as it were. And one of the scandals of the past week, and scandal might be a strong term, but I'm going to say scandal, of the past week was the launch of the iPhone 14 and the iPhone 14 Pro. And oh, that dynamic island, like I said last week, my nipples are so hard for this dumb-ass little bubble at the top of a smartphone that for some reason is considered a feature and the most life-changing thing since the wheel, I guess. At least that's the way it's promoted. I don't know. Oh, gotta have that iPhone 14. Gotta have the dynamic island. Gotta have it. There's people out there. They talk like that. Go on Twitter. Not that I think that reflects reality, but for some people who have no fucking lives, I guess it does. Anyway, speaking of Twitter, people went to Twitter seemingly in droves, and one of the biggest subjects on the day that people, or over the past couple days when they had gotten their iPhone 14s, a large complaint came down to the fact that the iPhone 14 does not have a SIM card slot. It comes with an eSIM. Now, what's an eSIM? Okay, so an eSIM is actually not a new technology. Also, Android phones have had them for a very long time. I mean, this is actually pretty common stuff. And an eSIM is effectively an adaptable built-in SIM card that's already in your device. Okay, so you don't have to put anything in. Now, it's adaptable, like I said. That means that whatever carrier you're using, cell phone carrier, that you're using, Verizon, T-Mobile, whatever. In general, you should be able to use a phone loaded with an eSIM on any of those. Now, that's not entirely true because Verizon often requires you to have very specific, bands, very specific antenna or radios, I should say, to, use their 5G, right, like mmWave and so on. But for the most part, with an eSIM, you're supposed to be able to use it anywhere. However, people found out that those claims, might look good on paper, but in reality, perhaps not so much. And so I want to talk about this a little bit, though, okay? Do I think eSIMs, because this question actually came to me, and I'm not going to get into it in a Patreon-only Wednesday Q&A. I want to get to it right here and just kind of open up talking about this, because it's going to be a bit of a running theme throughout this episode, is that the narrative that you're getting online, which this is frankly the running theme of Sovryn Tech's existence, the narrative that you're getting online on both sides, whatever that happens to be, is not the truth. The problem here with what happened with the iPhone 14, and I don't have to put a link in the show notes. You can just type in iPhone 14 eSIM on any social media network or any search engine, and you're going to find exactly what I'm talking about instantaneously. I want to say, I think for a lot of, this is very real. I even saw, other great tech journalists and tech commentators, and I mean that, like Snubs and some others, where, even she was coming out and saying, yeah, look, if we hear you, if you're dealing with your family, going, what the hell am I doing? Where do I put my SIM card? How does this work? This isn't working. I'm having to deal with customer service. There's the problem. What I just said, dealing with customer service. That's the issue. Okay. The eSIM technology, it does work the way that it's said, or the way that it's designed to work. Okay. The problem is that, a lot of people are having to switch over their phones. And with eSIM, because the carriers aren't really ready for this yet, and they're not. And you take your pick of, except for maybe Google Fi, but I'll talk about my experience with that as well, as we get into this a little bit more. The carriers are the ones that aren't ready for this. And they don't exactly know what to do, with an eSIM right away. And people are ending up having hours-long waits and getting, basically guffaws from customer service representatives at the telcos, because, they're just like, wait, what the fuck is this problem? And of course, it's all kind of happening at the same time, because the iPhone 14, ended up in the mail for everybody that pre-ordered, basically at the same time. And it created a real mess. But again, let's make this super clear. The issue is not really eSIMs. The issue is the telcos. Now, there's just in the past, and let's be clear here, folks, smartphones, not so much cell phones, but smartphones have only been around for essentially 15 years, right? The iPhone comes out in 2007. That was basically what we would call the first modern smartphone, not counting anything by BlackBerry or whatever. But they've only been around for 15 years. Within that 15 years of time, and speaking as somebody who is, who has written the book on security with Android smartphones particularly, okay? But within that time, we've seen this where, for example, in fact, this is going to be part of the story of the week. Trying to get the telcos in the US to evolve SMS messaging, right? And to get them to adopt RCS. And we're going to talk about RCS more later. I'm not saying that RCS is any kind of, silver bullet or anything, but it's just one example of where, in that case, Google basically had to force RCS on Android smartphones with Android messages, which is the default SMS client. And just basically ran over the telcos, which is basically what Apple's doing with the iPhone 14. They are forcing the very slow telco industry to go forward, to move into the future a bit with eSIM. Okay. Because now it's not an option. Now they can't rest on their laurels. So everybody complaining that Apple fucked things up with the eSIM and the iPhone 14, unless somebody's going to show me an actual technical issue, which I have yet to hear of or see, that is not true. Look, there's plenty to fucking complain about with Apple, and we will. But, don't, this is one case where really this is not Apple's fault. This is where Silicon Valley has once again kind of forced more legacy systems to move forward. Now, that said, I don't really want that to sound like I'm patting Silicon Valley on the back. I don't want you to think that I'm giving Apple any kind of credit here. Okay, I'm just speaking the reality of the problem. That's all I'm doing here. Do I like eSIM technology? No, actually, I don't. I think it's a problem. I think SIM cards in general are actually a problem. And in fact, they're one of the core problems that shows that really just about any smart device that you put a SIM card into, eSIM or not, there's inherent issues with this. Now, okay, so what are the inherent issues? So the inherent, and we've talked about these for many years on Sovryn Tech, that SIM cards, there can actually be exploits built into them in the manufacturing process. And we know that has happened. Like, we have the absolute evidence, and it didn't take this tech journalist to break that news. There were plenty others who did. So SIM cards can be a problem, in that sense. And could eSIM resolve the problem of there being exploits put in by, say, nation state actors or other malicious actors, into SIM cards, where that SIM card, which operates under the baseband firmware, which is really wide open and a massive security exploit on any smartphone in and of itself, or any like really ARM-based device with cellular radios in them, that could be a problem. Could eSIM resolve that because you're actually relying on Apple to build a secure SIM card and just jam it into your device? Yeah, honestly, like that's entirely possible. Again, Google in their Pixel line also have eSIM. eSIMs in their devices. I'm going to talk about that more in a minute with the Pixel line. Another way that this is advantageous, and this is something, so a very simple security thing to do with a smartphone. Look, I hate smartphone cases. Hate them because pretty much all of them are just cheap shit. I mean, they're so cheap, and yet your smartphone could cost shy of $1,000. And then you're wrapping it up in a $12 piece of TPU or something. Like, it kills. Not, I'm a function over form kind of guy, but really, when sometimes some of these devices are, for lack of a better phrase, industrial art, even though I wish that didn't even exist, but the world we're in, okay, at least it might as well be pretty if you're going to spy on me. But smartphone cases kill that shit. Here's the thing. Putting smartphone cases on, I think, is actually a security measure, not so much in protecting your device from drops and falls, but more protecting the SIM card slot from getting accessed so easily, with just a pinprick, and then, a malicious actor could swap out the SIM card or whatever. Usually a smartphone would address that, right? Saying, hey, there's a new SIM card in here, and would alert you to that. But there are genuine concerns, or, even bottom line, you have a port that you have closed off with a case, which I think is a great thing. And if you have cases where it's even just a little bit harder to open up, the USB-C port or whatever on the bottom of it, like, these are genuine security measures against malicious actors. All right. This is cybersecurity stuff, really. And I mean, it's such a simple thing, but, injection attacks of a type can happen this way. I mean, it's attractive, right? Because you don't need to do remote code execution at all. It's just, you're doing a hardware trick. So, an eSIM would also resolve that, right? While all of that could be considered true, I would actually rather roll the dice with a SIM card, mainly because one of the best security things you could do is get a little community together, and there are groups all around the world that do this, hackers and other types. You have a little community together, and you constantly just switch out SIM cards. Okay? I mean, just like constantly. So that way you're confusing what the telcos or, whatever corporatist organization is tracking you, and you're confusing the data, and they don't know who to identify the varying smartphone, the varying smartphone with. Okay. So I would rather have that capability than have eSIM, an eSIM built in. Okay. Because that offers a ton more security than anything that an eSIM itself could offer. That said, we also run into the issue of, like, I don't mind. So let me be clear on this. I don't mind there being an eSIM and a normal SIM card slot. In fact, so with my Pixel 6, one of the things, and not every telco offers this, but Google Fi does, just from a speed perspective. So if you have an eSIM and you have a physical SIM card and you put them both in, on Android, you can actually tell, and as long as the telco allows for it, you can have the telco access both SIM cards, and you actually get a faster data rate that way. And, more precise, varying things, that are relevant to the SIM card. So it's an advantageous thing to have, and I like that. Switching to a single eSIM, you actually lose some of those advantages. So again, and now I'm speaking from a very conventional sense, and again, my smartphone is something that is, largely work-related, so it's needed for work. So I don't exactly have an option, because at this stage of my life, I still need a day job. And since I do, it's got to be at its best. Okay. And this gives me, and I mean, I genuinely see the difference having two SIM cards like that. Now, speaking of two SIM cards, this is another issue. If you are traveling abroad, getting your eSIM set up with, say you're going from the colonies to Britain. Okay. When you go to Britain, you might, especially if you just use something like Mint or, one of the, I don't know, like an MVNO of some type, that gives you a great deal in the United States, partly because it doesn't have any overseas, data, and that's not part of their plans. So when you go to Britain, you're going to get a SIM card, and it's inexpensive. I mean, it's like $15, and you get, like enough to go for a month. Like you'll get like 10 gig of data, and in many ways that's all you need, right? Even if you can't make phone calls or whatever. And I want to address this quick. Like, if you're concerned of like swapping SIM cards, with a little group so that you're not so easily individually being tracked, well, then how am I going to get text messages? How am I going to get phone calls? Because the SIM card is going to have the phone number travel with it. Well, that's the importance of using a messaging app that allows for calling, that allows for messaging, that is not phone number based. We're going to get into that conversation during Story of the Week. So this will actually play in, really, really well with that. But you should ultimately be doing that anyway. Using like a third-party messenger that kind of rises above. It has, it's platform agnostic. Okay. So where were we with that? Right. So you're going overseas. And, like setting up an eSIM in these, I mean, maybe if you went into a shop, they would walk you through the process where you go to buy like one of these cards. But usually you're not even going into a cell phone store. You're just going into like a convenience store in Europe and just getting a quick SIM card. And it's nothing, and it's instantaneous, and it works great. Like, there's a genuine advantage to having just, a SIM card, which is effectively a piece of hardware, albeit cardboard, having it, or plastic, having a SIM card and just popping that thing in, and away you go. $15 and you're done. You're going to lose that with an eSIM. And it's hard for me not to think that there isn't some kind of corporatist thinking in that no longer being able to switch SIM cards is forcing you, into like the identifier that is the eSIM. So I am not a fan of eSIM. technology. Like, really, I mean, I can appreciate the advantages I get by having both, eSIM and having, and having still a physical SIM card slot. But no, I'd much rather, I mean, the only argument that makes it like worthwhile is to say that, well, this is going to be more secure than the SIM cards you get, which are potentially not very secure, which is true. But then I don't trust Apple any more than I trust SIM card companies. I don't trust Google any more than I trust SIM card companies. The best thing that I could trust is just fucking with the data by constantly switching out SIM cards, with a group of people. And then, it's just sending up a ton of noise to block the signal of my identity. So I don't see this as a good thing, but I just want to be abundantly clear. The problem here is not Apple. The problem is the telcos are wildly behind the times. So moving on, speaking with another company that frankly seems to be very much behind the times, that being Intel. I can't believe this. Link is in the show notes if you want to learn more, but this is just, so it was 1993 when Intel, finally stepped out from underneath the 386 and 486 SX and DX nomenclature, that, was really dominating, from like the 286 up, in the late 80s into the early 90s. And they finally ended up, talking about their next gen processor, that being the Pentium, and it cannot be overstated just how game changing, and especially for games, just how game changing the Pentium processor was when that finally was unleashed. It didn't go with the 586 nomenclature. They called it the Pentium. This is going to change everything. And, in many ways it very much did. Like, the desktop PC got fucking serious when the Pentium finally came out. Not to say that I don't fondly think back on my Pentium, PC. I do fondly think back on my 386 and 486, but not so much my Pentium, my first Pentium. Of course, that would be succeeded by the Pentium 2, the Pentium 3, and then, of course, the legendary Pentium 4, which would be the first processor to, really get its ass above 3 gigahertz. And would actually end up getting wiped the floor with by AMD. So the Pentium name has been around for a very long time. Also, the Celeron name has been around for almost as long as the name Pentium. In Intel's infinite lack of wisdom, they have decided to drop those names. And they're just going to call it, instead of Intel Pentium, instead of, Celeron, they're just going to call it Intel Processor. That's it. They're just going to say, so what does it have in there? Does it have a Pentium? Does it have a Celeron? No, it has an Intel Processor. Now, I can't help but think that what Intel's trying to do here, they're playing some mind games. Okay, they are wanting to associate the term, the company name Intel with processors in general, with computer processors. It's a clever trick. But I really like that. That's a marketing ploy, like all the way. That's the only thing I can think of. Like, I mean, not that AMD does any better, right? Like AMD, they've also recently dramatically changed their naming system for their processors, and it's confusing as fuck. Like I have no goddamn idea, and I'm a hardware guy, like I'm historically, I've very much been into, computer hardware and really paying attention to, clock speeds and numbers, the whole thing. And AMD just has me like throwing up papers. Like, what the hell are you guys? I don't even, it's like walking into a store and seeing like lactose free milk. It's like, wait, what the fuck is in that carton? And you don't know. And that's how it feels like with AMD. But now Intel is just, frankly, making things worse and trying to engage in clever marketing that honestly I think fucks things up. But at the same time, it kind of doesn't matter, because generally when I'm talking to somebody else, even very tech-savvy people, about, what processor do you have in there? The two numbers they talk about the most are the generation number, as in like this year in 2022, the latest, of course, from Intel is 12th gen. And then is it, an i3, an i5, an i7, or now, of course, we have i9s, or is it an i9? And that's all that people really pay attention to. I don't think anybody even really cares about Pentium or Celeron. So it's in some ways, this doesn't really matter. And I don't feel like it's mattered for a very long time. I just don't see them simplifying the situation. And again, it really all just feels like kind of nasty marketing, because quite frankly, Intel's processors suck. And AMD, the sad part for me here is that AMD has a golden opportunity to go ahead and have an excuse for a rebranding, which again, they did anyway, but to do a rebranding that makes an ass ton of sense, and could get people, well, I don't know. They're not going to convert people with simple processor names. Okay. But AMD has a chance, to call out some stupidity on Intel, and they're probably not going to take it. And if anything, like I said, they're going in the wrong direction because they've overcomplicated, their naming structure anyway. The people that would actually care about that sort of thing, I suppose they don't mind the complexity because they're actually going to really pay attention to this shit. But it's just a very odd time. But I mean, and what I'm saying is, if I was AMD, the marketing I would engage in, okay, and look, I have, I've been an ad exec, I'm in PR, I know how this works. What I would do is I'd be doing this whole campaign that says effectively, you don't know what you're getting when you buy an Intel PC. Because they're dropping the Pentium Gold naming structure, which, you would not want to buy one of those, right? That's something that's in the Microsoft Surface Go. It's very low end stuff. It's effectively a re-engineered, 5, 6, 7-year-old smartphone processor. I would be saying you have no idea what's in that box when you buy Intel now, because they've dropped their names. You don't know what's a premium processor, and you don't know, what's a shitty one, or what's a low end processor that's meant to just run fanless. But they're not going to do that. And I mean, at the end of the day, are AMD and Intel, AMD's doing hand over fist as far as, quarterly numbers, so it's not like they're really hurting. But at the end of the day, is the whole world going to ARM anyway? Yeah, it really feels that way. So, maybe it just doesn't matter at all anyway, because it's it's like the Allosaurus and the T-Rex just attacking each other, and you're just wondering who's going to get in enough cuts first. Anyway, just to round it out, speaking of PCs that probably would have had an Intel processor in it, and I would have guessed 12th gen, but we do have news, and this is going out to the fans of Chrome OS, which, hey, you're using the most, next to OpenBSD, you're using more or less the most secure operating system on the planet. So I'm not saying private, I said secure, so good for you. But you're not going to be getting another Pixelbook that was originally very far along in plans, as I understand it, to come out in 2023. So now there is still going to be that Pixel branded tablet that Google showed off during the May I/O in 2022. And, here's the thing. A lot of people have come out, and this is once again where the narrative online is just fucking nuts. And the reality is, as always, somewhere in between. A lot of people are thinking, whoa, is this like Google giving up on Chrome OS? No. Now, while consumer usage of Chromebooks, of Chrome OS in general, has, gone down really precipitously over the past couple of years, that's just consumer usage. That's not enterprise or education or even government. Okay, that in those categories, it's skyrocketing in growth. It's not going down. In consumer spaces, it's going down. Does this mean there'll never be another Pixelbook? Does this mean that Google is giving up on Chrome OS? No, I don't think it means any of that at all. Something that these companies are wont to do, especially a company like Google, who's so deep in software, in this case, Chrome OS and even Android, or like Apple, which granted, they have entire tyrannical control. And actually, I think it works out well for Apple, or it does. I mean, you can just, if you want to look at it by profitability or just by security, like it really works well for them. Like companies like to have, when they're so ingrained in their software and they're so in charge of the operating system, especially, companies will do this, like Microsoft does it with the Surface line, where they want to show their other hardware partners, here's what you can do with our operating system if you just put the money into it. So they make a super premium device. And, you look at the Pixelbooks, which have there been like 5 overall in the past decade? I mean, not necessarily even with the Pixel nomenclature, but like Google branded Chrome OS devices. There actually haven't been that many. But they've always been what, in the industry we call reference devices. Okay. And there's not a lot of profitability to be made in reference devices. I mean, the car industry does something very similar, where they show prototypes of what's possible, and all this, and usually it doesn't even get to the consumers. This is a case where it did get to consumers, but clearly they weren't looking to make a lot of money on it. Now, Sundar Pichai came out in the past week and said, hey, yeah, we're really paring down on what Google does, and so this Pixelbook line, basically getting eliminated, would seem to be a response to that. I don't think this is a bad thing for a couple of reasons. One is, if you're really into Chrome OS, which again, I don't blame you. Okay. If you're really, is your privacy out the door? Of course it is. But then what? Unless you're using Linux or something, like, tell me what privacy you have anyway. Or if you're using older versions of Windows, which Satan bless you. Like if you're somebody who's, I rock Windows 7, or I'm still rocking Windows XP or something like that, you are doing it right, my man. And I mean that. Or if you're using Linux or BSD or something along those lines. Otherwise, any modern operating system, 100%, you are tossing your privacy out the door, just as you are if you use Chrome OS. So this argument that, but all your data is going to Google, and what? Using Windows 11, you think all your data isn't going to fucking Microsoft? Are you kidding? We know it is. They admit it. Oh. Anyway, we're going to back off on Sovryn Tech in general. We're going to back off from talking a lot of consumer tech, but I just want to get like these episodes, these first few episodes as we're coming back here. Like I want to just kind of give address the state of things in 2022, as it were. Anyway, I don't blame people for using Chromebooks, and I don't blame you for wanting to have a device sold and manufactured and sold by the company that develops the operating system itself, right? Why does the Golden Stallion even recommend buying a Pixel phone? Because it gets the latest security updates, and it gets, the latest OS updates even for a very long period of time. But more importantly, it gets them very quickly. Usually it gets them very quickly, and quicker than any other manufacturer. Because, again, those security updates are just the number one thing to really be concerned about when you're buying a modern piece of, of consumer technology. So with the Pixelbook gone, I mean, like, are they ditching Chrome OS? Are they finally going over to Fuchsia? All this. No, I don't think that's what's going on at all here. I think ultimately what's happening is every company is paying for supply chain issues, or, is being punished with supply chain issues, coming out of the pandemic, and it's taken this amount of time. Where years later, I mean, and you can see this across all industries where everybody's really paring down, and shit's going to get ugly. At the same time, like, I actually like that Google is not trying to do so goddamn much, because they never really go all in on most of the products, be it software or hardware, that they put out there, minus maybe the Pixel phones. The Pixel phones are like the one, and before it, the Nexus phones are the one thing where they really, really put the effort in. That's why I'm still kind of confident saying that. But like, the only things you can ever count on from Google are basically Google Docs, It's like Drive, Gmail, and Pixel devices. Like that's the only, and of course search, but like those are the only things you can count on from Google. I wouldn't trust anything else that they do because they'll pull the plug on it or they'll rebrand it. Like look at what happened with, Meet and Hangouts Meet and Duo, right? Like Duo's gone. And we're going to get into this more. This is going to bleed in nicely to our story of the week, in the conversation that we need to have there. But yeah, I think this is ultimately like Google realized they can't afford to do this. Also, they don't need to do this anymore because you have HP and Lenovo and others making premium Chrome OS devices. And that's enough, for people who want that great experience, they can get it there. I mean, I have an Asus Chromebook that has an 11th gen Intel processor in it. And that's going to get updates until 2030. So like now, I mean, we could talk about the bullshit around, cutoff of security updates for Chromebooks. And there is some bullshit to be had there. But I mean, premium devices are getting made by other manufacturers. There is no need for Google to be involved in that. On the other hand, is there an importance for Google to directly make, their own hardware with smartphones? Oh yeah, because that's where their bread and butter is ultimately, because most people are doing searches and, surfing the web on smartphones. They need to be there. That's the one place they really need to be, which is probably also why they're going with the tablet. I mean, and we also have the problem, and many people have talked about this over the years, that really Google has an issue of like they have a dual identity. Like having Chrome OS and an Android like having two operating systems is kind of a fool's errand. And they should really just concentrate on one instead of trying to make Chrome OS like such a hybrid. Unless there's something that they're not admitting about Android, meaning that there are massive security flaws within Android that Chrome OS actually resolves. If there's something along those lines going on, I mean, they haven't admitted to it, but regardless, yeah, I kind of wish they would pick one and stick with it. And maybe that's why they're making a Pixel tablet. Maybe they've seen the writing on the wall and they're aware of this. But having the multiple operating systems, it's not exactly working out for them. And at some point, I'm going to do a review of the Asus Chromebook that I have and kind of talk about the modern experience of Chrome OS, because I think people might find that interesting, and there are things to say, and they're not all positive. But yeah, this doesn't surprise me. But at the same time, I don't think it's Google giving up on Chrome OS. They just know they don't need to do it. Other hardware developers, like HP and Lenovo and even Dell and whoever, they're carrying the torch, and Google doesn't need to. So, cut the funding where they can. Anyway, we're going to talk more about Google's stunts and them, quitting things and what they should be working on or what they shouldn't be working on when we come back with more Sovryn Tech. Woo! Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Or are you just looking for a performance boost for your business's online presence? The answer is Agorist Hosting. Agorist Hosting is the agile web host that offers full concierge service, from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, even custom apps for your Shopify store, and more. All with security, reliability, redundancy, and privacy at the forefront. Oh, and those bleeding edge features? How about hosting your data in a decentralized system like IPFS, the Interplanetary File System? Good luck getting that from those other guys. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. Head over to agoristhosting.com to get started. That's AGORIST hosting.com. agoristhosting.com.
Story of the week.
Woo, thank you so much to Agorist Hosting for supporting Sovryn Tech, a longtime sponsor. Really honored by that. Go hit them up, agoristhosting.com. Now, because those are people that are doing it right. Now, let's get back to talking about Android, talking about Google. Are they doing it right? Meh. Perhaps not so much. And this is a conversation that I want to have around the green bubble and the blue bubble. And those of us, the tech savvy, know what this is about, especially the iPhone users. You know what this is about. Throughout 2022, it's actually been kind of funny at times and frankly insane at just seeing like Google's marketing or advertising attempts. And yeah, I mean, maybe I could pull up a story that gives a list of all of them. I mean, they're buying advertisements in the middle of New York City, trying to basically goad Apple into adopting RCS. So RCS, of course, is rich chat services. It is supposed to be the evolution of SMS. It's an evolution of basic texting services that allows for a lot more features to be had when sending SMS messages. Okay. For example, like you can get read receipts where you know if somebody saw what you sent. You can have emoji reacts. You can potentially send, like high resolution photos, video. Like there's a lot that can be done with RCS. Now, I've been largely supportive of RCS over the years, and it's really an answer to iMessage, to Apple's iMessage. And I get that. Okay. And let's talk about iMessage for a second here, because iMessage is really like what makes Apple a successful company. Is it the great hardware, the beautiful hardware, the polished aluminum or whatever, like what is it that makes Apple so fucking profitable? Let me tell you what it is. Yeah, fine. It was that the iPhone came out first, in 2007. But really, Apple's profitability comes down to lock-in on the iOS ecosystem, or the Apple ecosystem. And what causes that lock-in? Is it iTunes? No, that's available in other places. So it's not the music. In fact, Apple Music's on Android. Is it Apple Pages? Is their Office suite just that damn good? Is it Final Cut Pro? Like, what is it that locks so many fucking people into Apple's ecosystem that it's, the first $1 trillion company in history? I think you can instantly say it is iMessage and iMessage alone. Notice that iMessage is not on Android. And there was conversation of porting iMessage to Android years ago, and Apple's C-suite came right out and said, don't do it, because then people are going to stop buying iPhones, right? And of course they would, because you can get a smartphone that is infinitely more capable and powerful. Well, maybe not infinitely, but significantly, especially a few years ago, that would have features that Apple's only getting to putting in now. Just look at some of Samsung's ads as late that are kind of funny against the iPhone. Where they're like, you got this many. Hey, you've got this many pixels in your iPhone 14 camera. We've been doing that since 2015 or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's funny. You can say that they're cheap shots, but it's funny anyway to see these, scumbag companies going at each other. But iMessage is really what it's all about. Now, there's the lock-in of, people are just using, it's the inertia, not the lock-in, but there's the inertia of people have gotten used to using iMessage, and so they just kind of keep on using it. And their contacts list is, attached to iMessage, so they just keep using it. Kind of the big thing here with iMessage that RCS does not have, and that Android does not have like a one ring to rule them all situation with, is that you can send high resolution photos and high resolution videos with iMessage. Android, with what's built into it, does not readily have that available. And that's part of what RCS is trying to address. Even that, it's not doing very well. It's more going to send a link to that is, that could be played quicker, but it's going to send a link to something in Google Photos, part of Google Drive, which in itself is a problem. Anyway, that's iMessage's big deal. Now, Tim Cook recently came out in response to a lot of the jabs that Google has been paying a pretty penny for against the green bubble, blue bubble problem, messaging between Android and iOS, and said, like, look, if you want grandma to get high resolution photos and video, you're going to have to buy an iPhone. And that's it. So he said, iMessage, we're not going to stop, the blue bubble problem. We're just not going to do it. And is it within their right as a company to do that? If you're into that sort of thing, that kind of capitalist, gobbledygook, then sure, it's within their rights to do that sort of thing. Honestly, and here's the deal, like Google, I'm not going to say that Apple is in any way evil for what they're doing with iMessage and that they're not adopting RCS. Once again, we have a situation here where the narratives are just so far away from the truth. Google knows everything, and a lot of people know everything that I was just saying. Okay, they know the power that Apple has with iMessage. So Google knows what's keeping people from buying more Android phones, and thus keeping Google from collecting more and more data about people via their operating system. What's keeping people from buying more Android phones? It is that iMessage lock-in. So they are trying to resolve this. Now, they have been, over the past couple of years, and I'm sure for even much longer, they have been trying to get the Android Messages app, their app that they develop, they've been trying to get it to interact more with iMessage, or, with texts sent via iMessage, where like you can actually do more native reacts that would register in iMessage, looking more normal. You're still going to run into the green bubble, blue bubble problem. But they've been trying to reverse engineer this issue for a long time. But they know that this is what's keeping people from getting there. So they're doing everything they fucking can to goad Apple into adopting their text messaging standard, that being RCS. It's not working. It's not working I don't think it's convincing I'm hoping it's not convincing anybody. I can imagine there's people who, and you can kind of go online on social media, I suppose, and see this, and even some journalists will write about it, where it's time for Apple to adopt RCS. It's time for this to stop. The green bubble, blue bubble problem has to stop. Here's the thing, folks. Again, this is where things are where reality just got thrown out, okay, by both of these companies. Here's the thing. You don't need to use Android Messages or iMessage. In fact, this is a wholly U.S. problem. I'm not saying the U.S. is wholly. I'm saying WHOLLY. This is only a problem in the U.S. because the rest of the world doesn't give a rat's ass about SMS. They don't care about iMessage. In fact, so I think the stats just came out last week that for the first time in about a decade, there are more iPhone users than there are Android users. That's for the first time that's been the case. Okay, and does that have to do with iMessage? Along with, I suppose, a little bit of boredom. Perhaps if you've been an Android user for a while, you might be like, I wonder what it's like on the other side of the bridge. Okay, a little bit of each of those. But a big part of it, I'm sure, is iMessage for many people. Okay. But in the rest of the world, Android just dominates. Just fucking dominates. It's not like in the rest of the world that people don't want iPhones. They do, partly because of its, dare I say, like American attitude, that people for some reason can still find appealing in other parts of the world. I don't know why, but whatever. It's like a symbol of wealth, I guess. Okay. Come to America. Tell me how many people are actually wealthy. Regardless, in the rest of the world, this isn't an issue. The rest of the world uses WhatsApp, or they use Telegram. And that's the thing. This green bubble, blue bubble problem is total American ego. And that's, and frankly, American stupidity. And American laziness. And oh yeah. Sorry, that American work ethic? No, shut up. That doesn't exist. Or at least it doesn't anymore. This is pure American laziness. And like I said, and American stupidity. This is not a problem in the rest of the world. It's just not. So what you can do here is completely circumvent this bullshit battle going on between Apple and Google. And all you have to do is choose something like Telegram or Signal if you want to go with that. Or even better, Threema. There's plenty of options. Yeah, it's going to be a pain in the ass. I know. It's going to be a pain in the ass to convince people, especially, to convince people to move to something else, to move beyond iMessage or SMS in general even. And I get it, especially since, if you're like a Google fanboy, which, hey, I used to be one. Used to be an Apple fanboy too, but anyway. If you're a Google fanboy, you've dealt with Allo, you've dealt with Hangouts, you've had, all of these attempts by Google to get into the messaging game because they know they need to do that, because they know how powerful it is for Apple. They know they need that slice of the pie. And Google, in, classic Google fashion, dumps it after, since 20 billion people, even though there are only 7 billion people on the planet, if 20 billion people don't adopt it, Google doesn't keep it going. Yeah, believe me, that's their math. Like they already want, they want babies inside wombs signing up for Gmail accounts. You understand? So I know that you've tried to convince people in the past to get on an alternate messaging platform outside of iMessage or outside of SMS, whatever that happens to look like. But really, this is getting so bad right now. Apple's not going to budge. Google's not going to win this thing. And they're going to drop RCS. So if you're counting, and believe me, I'm a person who was kind of counting on RCS partly because SMS has such fantastic uptime compared to more, shall we say, server-backed services. Or anyway, I don't need to get into that. But for me, having as close to 100% uptime in being able to get a message the moment it gets sent and all this, where I don't have to wait, or I'm not worried, is Signal having another outage today or whatever? I couldn't deal with that. So I had to some degree, get used to SMS. And was I grateful that RCS was available that allowed SMS texts to get end-to-end encrypted? Yeah, sure I was. Okay. But even then, RCS, kind of the same problem where that would still fail and you'd have to send out, regular SMS messages. And that creates a whole confusing issue in itself, because the advantage for RCSs, and for a lot of people it is that, it has, end-to-end encryption built in, which is a fine thing to want. For a lot of people who aren't so tech savvy, they don't know when it's end-to-end encrypted and when it's not, even though, there's a little lock icon or whatever, but they don't want to pay attention to it. So you're better off just going, again, with a third-party service like Signal or Threema or Telegram. Even though you want to talk about security issues with Telegram, that's fine. You can talk about it, but move on with other things. Bottom line being, just get the fuck out of the duopoly. Okay? And I'm not saying use WhatsApp. I didn't recommend that. Okay? I know that that's the most popular messaging app in the world, and that, frankly, in some parts of the world where you're at, you can't even get around. You can't order food or a taxi or anything without using WhatsApp. You have to use WhatsApp. Or if you're in China, you've got to use WeChat. Or if you're in Japan, you've got to use Line Messenger. This is the thing. In other countries, what I'm describing here has already happened, and it's happened for 10 years. It's nothing new to them. They already use something else. They're already out of the fucking, out from under Apple and Google's thumb. And good for them. So what I'm saying is, Americans, pull up the pants a bit, okay? And move on. Just do what you have to. Get people off of iMessage. Get people off of SMS. And get them on something end-to-end encrypted. Because, again, this is going to get uglier. Okay? The answer is not to get more people on iMessage. The answer is not to rely on anything that Google's doing. The answer is more to go with the company where their bread and butter is the messaging app, that they solely develop and that they solely work on. Do I think Telegram is a fine option for this? Absolutely. Do I think that Threema is a fantastic option for this sort of thing? You bet your ass I do. Signal? Sure. I know that's got some inertia behind it too. Okay. But just get out from underneath this. Okay? Really. This war, there's no side to take here. Don't take Google's side. Don't take Apple's side. Don't go with RCS. Don't say, iMessage is great or whatever. Just get out from underneath it. That's what matters. And this speaks to what we were talking about earlier, where like using, a messaging app that doesn't rely upon like phone number specific stuff, to where you could switch devices with it and use it on cross-platform and with multiple devices. Like that's a great advantage, to have there, and use that as part of the selling point with people. Use the privacy, the end-to-end encryption, use the, the cross-platform nature of it, all that. Use that to sell people on these ideas. Like it is time more than ever. And it's not just about end-to-end encryption anymore. Like now it's getting to the point, like, I don't know what the fuck these companies are going to do next. It's crazy. So that was the whole point of the story of the week. I can't believe what's happening here. And to make things worse, like the way these companies, like they're basically going to the Senate about this shit. I mean, it's getting to that point where I'm sure Google is going to would love to lobby the government to force Apple to adopt RCS. I mean, Apple's got their own lobbyists. I don't imagine that's going to, that's going to work or that's going to happen. But just don't fall into their game. That's it. Exist within the cracks of the system. And there you go. We'll be right back with more Sovryn Tech. Just stop. SMS, it's dead. It's over. iMessage, dead. Over. Drop it. Anyway, be back with more.
Science, outer space, psychology, book and movie recommendations, fiction from the Sovryn universe, travels to points of mystery and the unexplained, and even spirituality? All of that can only mean one thing. The Sovryn Technica Newsletter! By me, Ellen Sovryn, along with some stuff by that crazy man I call my husband, Dr. Brian Sovryn. It's the latest tool in your self-directed education. The education that really matters. If you want to cut through the crap of mainstream media ass clowns, sign up for the Sovryn Technica newsletter right now at sovryn.substack.com. That's sovryn.substack.com. The Sovryn Technica newsletter. Welcome to the future.
Listener's choice.
Oh yeah, baby. Man. The absolute 10th wonder of the world right there, Ellen Sovryn. If you are not reading the Sovryn Technic newsletter, which I'm actually going to dive into a little bit more content from that when we get into the ancient and the strange segment of this episode. But I'll talk about that more when we get to it later. If you're not reading that, man, are you missing out? I mean, I mean it. And what a woman. I mean, Daryl Hannah's got nothing on. Anyway, folks, let's just get into listener's choice. Let's talk about Amazon, shall we? We're hitting everybody else up. Are we gonna talk about Microsoft at some point? I don't know. Everybody rips on them, so. No, I suppose there are Microsoft fanboys out there. I don't get it. Like there was a time where I could kind of understand it. Like when Windows 7 came out, like, holy shit, sure, I understand why people are like, wow, Microsoft did everything right, but then that fell apart after just a few years. Anyway, like I said, we got to get away from consumer technology, but we're not doing that yet because we got to talk about this coming in from a Sovryn Tech listener from The Verge. If you could tell that was The Verge, because I don't know what Sanskrit or hieroglyphs they're using here for their name, but it's not even fucking letters anymore. Have you been to theverge.com lately? I mean, you can click the link in the show notes for the story. Story coming from Jennifer Pattison Toohey. But, yeah, I wouldn't know. I mean, I look at that. I can read Arabic better than I can read whatever the fuck The Verge has on the top of their screen here. This is insane. Anyway, moving right along. Speaking of insane, here's the headline. Amazon bought iRobot to see inside your home. What a surprise. Let's read it here, at least some of it, from Jennifer Pattison Toohey. When I spoke to iRobot's Colin Angle earlier this summer, he said iRobot OS, the latest software operating system for its robot vacuums and mops, would provide its household bots with a deeper understanding of your home and your habits. This takes on a whole new meaning with the news today that Amazon has bought iRobot for $1.7 billion. You can see Dr. Evil putting up the pinky, right? And this story, by the way, is from August 5th, 2022. So this just happened very recently. I want to take a second here. iRobot actually doesn't make a whole ton of money from its, from like its vacuum cleaners, and I didn't even know they had mops. That's not where they make their money. You know where they make their money? Military contracts. That's where they make their money. Future weapons systems. And I know. I was there. I saw in the building. Big door. FWS. You could right out of Tron. Now that is a big door. That was a big door. That's where they make their money. If you want to know where a company makes their money, look for that big door in the building. The biggest one you can find. Anyway, so Amazon basically just became a military company, buying out iRobot. Moving right along, Jennifer Pattison Toohey did not seem to find it fitting to bring that part up, which should be the real rage here, but there's plenty of rage to have when it comes to privacy, of course. Let's keep reading from Jennifer Pattison Toohey. From a smart home perspective, it seems clear Amazon wants iRobot for the maps it generates to give it that deep understanding of our homes. Sorry, I'm just trying to even get that. I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to grok this phrasing, deep understanding of our homes. What does that mean? How am I? Look, I just live in my house. What is this deep understanding that I'm supposed to have? Was that the direct quote from them saying that with a deeper understanding of your home and habits? I think that was a direct quote from Amazon. This language is so strange. I worry about this sort of thing. In fact, you know what? I may do some magic here in the BDSM Studio 4. Of course, BDSM stands for Brian's Dungeon of Sex and Magic. I am going to conjure the dead, much like the Witch of Endor. No, not that Endor. That was the moon of Endor with Wicket. It was not Endor. I don't know what the fuck Endor looks like in the Star Wars galaxy, but we're not talking about that. Like the Witch of Endor, calling up Samuel, the prophet, to tell Saul that you're dead, motherfucker. I am going to conjure the dead right now, and I am going to bring to life none other than the great George Carlin. George, could you help me to understand, what is with this phrasing around, this deep understanding of your home, as if your home was some kind of living creature? I don't get it. Why would they talk in such strange terms? Are they trying to hide something, sell something? Tell me about it, George. Woo!
I don't like words that hide the truth. I don't like words that conceal reality. I don't like euphemisms or euphemistic language. And American English is loaded with euphemisms because Americans have a lot of trouble dealing with reality. Americans have trouble facing the truth. So they invent a kind of a soft language to protect themselves from it. And it gets worse with every generation. For some reason, it just keeps getting worse. I'll give you an example of that. There's a condition in combat. Most people know about it. It's when a fighting person's nervous system has been stressed to its absolute peak and maximum, can't take any more input. The nervous system has either snapped or is about to snap. In the First World War, that condition was called shell shock. Simple, honest, direct language. 2 syllables, shell shock. Almost sounds like the guns themselves. That was 70 years ago. Then a whole generation went by, and the Second World War came along, and the very same combat condition was called battle fatigue. 4 syllables now. Takes a little longer to say. Doesn't seem to hurt as much. Fatigue is a nicer word than shock. Shell shock. Battle fatigue. Then we had the war in Korea, 1950. Madison Avenue was riding high by that time, and the very same combat condition was called operational exhaustion. Hey, we're up to 8 syllables now. And the humanity has been squeezed completely out of the phrase. It's totally sterile now. Operational exhaustion. Sounds like something that might happen to your car. Then, of course, came the war in Vietnam, which has only been over for about 16 or 17 years. And thanks to the lies and deceit surrounding that war, I guess it's no surprise that the very same condition was called post-traumatic stress disorder. Still 8 syllables, but we've added a hyphen. And the pain is completely buried under jargon. Post-traumatic stress disorder. I'll bet you if we'd have still been calling it shell shock, some of those Vietnam veterans might have gotten the attention they needed at the time. I'll bet you that. I'll bet you that. But it didn't happen. And one of the reasons is because we were using that soft language, that language that takes the life out of life. And it is a function of time. It does keep getting worse. Give you another example. Sometime during my life, toilet paper became bathroom tissue. I wasn't notified of this. No one asked me if I agreed with it. It just happened. Toilet paper became bathroom tissue. Sneakers became running shoes. False teeth became dental appliances. Medicine became medication. Information became directory assistance. The dump became the landfill. Car crashes became automobile accidents. Partly cloudy became partly sunny. Motels became motor lodges. House trailers became mobile homes. Used cars became previously owned transportation. Room service became guest room dining. And constipation became occasional irregularity. When I was a little kid, if I got sick, they wanted me to go to the hospital and see the doctor. Now they want me to go to a health maintenance organization or a wellness center to consult a healthcare delivery professional. Poor people used to live in slums. Now the economically disadvantaged occupy substandard housing in the inner cities. And they're broke. They're broke. They don't have a negative cash flow position. They're fucking broke. Because a lot of them were fired. You know, fired. Management wanted to curtail redundancies in the human resources area. So many people are no longer viable members of the workforce. Smug, greedy, well-fed white people have invented a language to conceal their sins. It's as simple as that. The CIA doesn't kill anybody anymore. They neutralize people. Or they depopulate the area. The government doesn't lie. It engages in disinformation. The Pentagon actually measures nuclear radiation in something they call sunshine units. Israeli murderers are called commandos. Arab commandos are called terrorists. Contra killers are called freedom fighters. Well, if crime fighters fight crime and firefighters fight fire, what do freedom fighters fight? They never mention that part of it to us, do they? Never mention that part of it. And some of this stuff is just silly. We all know that. Like on the airlines, they say they want a pre-board. Well, what the hell is pre-board? What does that mean? To get on before you get on? They say they're going to pre-board those passengers in need of special assistance. Cripples. Simple, honest, direct language. There's no shame attached to the word cripple that I can find in any dictionary. No shame attached to it. In fact, it's a word used in Bible translations. Jesus healed the cripples. Doesn't take 7 words to describe that condition. But we don't have any cripples in this country anymore. We have the physically challenged. Is that a grotesque enough evasion for you? How about differently abled? I've heard them call that differently abled. You can't even call these people handicapped anymore. They'll say, we're not handicapped, we're handy-capable. These poor people have been bullshitted by the system into believing that if you change the name of the condition, somehow you'll change the condition. Well, hey, cousin, doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. We have no more deaf people in this country, hearing impaired. No one's blind anymore, partially sighted or visually impaired. We have no more stupid people. Everybody has a learning disorder. Or he's minimally exceptional. How would you like to be told that about your child? He's minimally exceptional. Oh, thank God for that. Psychologists actually have started calling ugly people those with severe appearance deficits. It's getting so bad that any day now I expect to hear a rape victim referred to as an unwilling sperm recipient.
Ah, see? Now it all makes sense. To say they're trying to confuse the issue? I guess so. But it didn't confuse Jennifer Patterson Toohey at The Verge. Or whatever that says at the top of that website. Reading on. Thank you, George. Reading. Go back to sleep, please. Enjoy Sheol, my friend. The vacuum company. Again, that is, no, it's not a vacuum company. It's a military fucking organization. Okay. Has detailed knowledge of our floor plans and crucially, how they change. It knows where your kitchen is, which your kids' rooms, which rooms are, well, I don't know about this writing, which your kids' rooms are, where your sofa is, and how new it is. And if you recently turned the guest room into a nursery, oh, you just had to have more little babies and bring them into this hellhole of a time right now. Okay. Anyway, reading on. This type of data is digital gold to a company whose primary purpose is to sell you more stuff. While I'm interested to see how Amazon can leverage iRobot's tech to improve its smart home ambitions, many are right to be concerned with the privacy implications. People want home automation to work better, but they don't want to give up the intimate details of their lives for more convenience. I don't believe you. Stallion breaking in. I don't believe that. I don't believe that for a second. People on the regular give up security and privacy for convenience. Convenience seems to be, and maybe this, in fact, dare I say, this adds into more of that American laziness. Because in other parts of the planet, it seems like privacy, people actually do give a shit about privacy. In fact, they give so much of a shit that half of them want to start an October revolution if they think a company like Google overreaches. And what's Google paying out now? You know, some $8 billion fine to the EU? Something to the tune of that. Is that chump change for them? Sure, on the grand scheme of things. But maybe that's what happened to the Pixelbook. Ah, fuck, we got to pay that EU bill. God damn it. I don't know. But anyway, no, I don't think people here give a rat's fucking ass about privacy. They just don't. But let's keep going. Okay. This is a conundrum throughout the tech world, but in our homes, it's far more personal. Amazon's history of sharing data with police departments through its subsidiary Ring, combined with its, quote, always listening for the wake word and, quote, Echo smart speakers, and now its thorough knowledge of your floor plan, give it a pretty complete picture of your daily life. Stallion breaking in to say nothing of the complete picture that Apple or Samsung or Google has just from the smartphone in your pocket. No vacuum cleaning required. I guess if I was to give Amazon any credit, at least they picked up their mess after they stole your privacy. Can't say the same for Google. They don't make vacuum cleaners. And thankfully. I mean, we'll suck up your floor and your data at the same time, but we won't suck you off because why give you the pleasure? No. Anyway, moving on. Each of iRobot's connected Roomba vacuums and mops trundles around homes multiple times a week, mapping and remapping the spaces. On its latest model, the J7, iRobot added a front-facing AI-powered camera that, according to Angle, has detected more than 43 million objects in people's homes. Other models have a low-resolution camera that points at the ceiling for navigation. Honestly, Stallion breaking in once again, I want to see the data of I want it to be known just how messy people are. in this country on average in their homes. I'd love to see those statistics. Like if you're going to take away our privacy, like at least let's turn it into a little bit of reality TV, shall we, and see what the fuck's going on. No, I don't really argue for that, but you get my point. Just more of that laziness. Moving on. All this makes it likely this purchase isn't about robotics. If that's what Amazon wanted, it would have bought iRobot years ago. Instead, it probably picked up the company for a relative bargain. iRobot just reported a 30% revenue decline in the face of increasing competition. To get a detailed look inside our homes. Why? Because knowing your floor plan provides context. And in the smart home that Amazon is making a major play for, context is king. Here we go. Quote, "We really believe in ambient intelligence, an environment where your devices are woven together by AI so they can offer far more than any device could do on its own," end quote. Marja Koopmans, sounds like Koopa, director of Alexa Smart Home, told me in an interview last month. Ambient intelligence requires multiple data points to work with detailed maps of our homes and the ability to communicate directly with smart home devices once Matter arrives. Matter. Now, what is Matter? So this is the thing. There's more here. Let me break this down a little bit. Amazon did not need to. Here's part of the. All right, there's a few reasons that I think they actually bought iRobot, and we don't even really need to read any more of the story. Okay, Amazon actually completely revolutionized, shall we say, in-home or in-warehouse robotics 20 years ago. I mean, they revolutionized it. Like the network of robots working in your average Amazon warehouse is phenomenal. And what it can do is absolutely phenomenal. And like I said, it was revolutionary at the time that Amazon started that. Okay. In fact, really, they treat their robots better than their human workers. What a surprise. So they could make their own vacuuming robots and they would probably blow away anything that iRobot has. What Amazon needed here, let's be clear on this. I mean, is this about privacy? Is The Verge right on here? Yes. Yeah, that's part of it. Okay. But there's more. But what Amazon really needed here was a brand that was not readily recognizable to the bulk of the population as being Amazon. Because the more Amazon in your house, people do, while I don't think that they, convenience is everything to them, and they will trade their privacy and everything else. They do get creeped out. When they see enough Amazon, and when you've had the situations like with the Ring doorbell, the video doorbell especially, that people are starting to find out about, and even things, where like, malicious actors are like talking to them in their bedroom while they're having sex or something. I mean, we've covered these stories on Sovryn Tech. People get creeped out. What they needed was a brand name that people are already invested in, like iRobot, so that they could get this deep understanding of your home. Again, as if your home was some kind of client for Sigmund Freud or something. Which I don't know what the fuck we're thinking about our homes if we're treating them like that. Anyway, so that's really what they're buying. They're buying the brand name. They don't even necessarily need the technology. However, are they going to take advantage of this technology? Oh, you bet your ass. Because, I mean, they already have military contracts, right? They've already, gone toe to toe against Microsoft for getting the Jedi contract. And I don't mean Qui-Gon Jinn, to get that. Like, they're dying to have those military contracts because that's guaranteed money. That's why any company, tech or otherwise, really pushes to get, they always want either, municipal law enforcement contracts or military contracts because, the authoritarian machine is just never going to stop, or at least that's the way it seems. And there's always cash flowing into that. So when you're going into, I mean, this makes perfect sense because look, the same supply chain issue that we were talking about earlier, post-pandemic, that is affecting Google, that is affecting pick your company name, is hitting Amazon. Even Amazon, I jest, even though it's not funny, I jest about how they treat their human workers. They're even trying to improve on that now because they know they're going to lose people and they've got to treat some of their people right because they probably can't like increase their pay. So they just got to, you know, I don't know, at least let them have bathroom breaks. No, I'm not fucking kidding. They wouldn't even let them have fucking bathroom breaks. It's fucking insane. Say nothing of the people that died in that goddamn hurricane that happened or tornado. Oh man. Anyway, they know they've got to treat their people better. Okay. But they're going to feel the squeeze of supply chain as well. And so how do you offset those profits when, you know, Amazon really only in the past 5 years started to report profitable quarters? Before then, they never reported a profitable quarter. But now investors want that and they expect that to continue because once they got the first taste of it, oh baby, give me more because I just need more, M-O-R, just give me more stuff, more money. Madness in its own right. You know, how about a deeper understanding of your investors? Holy shit, they're all insane. So are you. Anyway, they need military contracts to offset what's going to hurt them over the next few years with supply chain. Like I said, the economy is going to be fucking ugly for a good long while. You know, and the only response they can do, what did Joe Budweiser, I'm sorry, Joe Biden, what did that asshat say recently? He's like, you know, inflation, it was just a little bit. Look at those percentage numbers, man. That's not a little bit. Fuck. You're that close to Weimar Germany. What the hell are you talking about? That's all you can do is cognitive dissonance. All you can do is lie. You know, so what this, in my opinion, what this is really about is two things. One is getting that guaranteed money from military contracts that iRobot already had. Two, because, and again, there's no report here. And we've had the time to get the report. There is no report here that says they only bought the vacuum or mop end of the iRobot business. No, they bought everything. Wholesale. Military contracts and all. So they want the military contracts. Okay, that guaranteed money. And they want the brand name. That way it doesn't have to be Amazon. And you want to say, well, what evidence do you have for that, Stallion? Like, I thought Amazon products, you know, do well in each home or whatever. No. If that were true, see, Amazon knows better than any of us who's buying what. Amazon has to come up with, and regularly do, they come up with their own brand names and never tell you that the brand name is actually Amazon. For everything from like a bed that you buy to a shirt that you buy to whatever. It won't say that it's Amazon, but it's actually a company owned by Amazon. It's similar to like what Sony did with Iowa, right? Iowa was just internally built competition, but it wasn't really competition because Sony was reaping in all the profits. It was the same goddamn company. This is the same thing Amazon's doing. Like they're creating a faux competition within a monopsony. Okay. But also they're doing it because they know that people eventually will see, wait a minute, why the fuck is my house completely filled with Amazon shit? And they're going to get creeped out, and rightfully so. So to prevent that, what do? You have other brands, even though it's still all just Amazon. iRobot will be the same situation. It's a faux sense of trust. I mean, look, and this is my problem with the Verge is reporting, because they're saying that, well, you know, people are, you know, they don't want to get, here it is, but people want home automation to work better, but they don't want to give up the intimate details of their lives for more convenience. That's horseshit. Because nothing's changing here. Okay, what, Amazon's going to collect all the information now, but that didn't mean that iRobot wasn't collecting it all before. Of course they were. What, you're okay with iRobot collecting the info, but you're not okay with Amazon? What world does that fucking make sense? So no, don't tell me that people actually give a shit. They don't, and it's sad. You can, I hope you do, we can on this show, and we can talk about the stuff, and we can actually dig in to the reality. We can dig into the white space of this journalistic text and see what's actually happening. But don't pretend for a second that people care, because the journalists obviously don't either. And are you kidding me? The fucking Verge relies on Amazon backlinks as much as anybody fucking else. I know this business. I know this business too well. It's my day job. It's what I do. I'm constantly schlepping these fucking journalists. You know, and not all of them are fuckers. But I'm constantly schlepping these people. Hey, my client's got this shit on Amazon. Here's a backlink. You get a little cut of it. Go for it, baby. Write up a story. Thank you. I do it all the time. Acting like they The Verge acting like they care about privacy. Give me a fucking break. So fuck them all. Amazon, The Verge, all of them. Stop. It's all nonsense language, just like George Carlin was talking about. Anyway, we'll try and have a little bit of fun as we go further into the show. We'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. Oh boy, somebody give me a drink. Hey baby, I know, you are tired of Gmail. You have had enough. Well, I have a solution for you. What I want you to do is you go to Fastmail, okay? It's fastmail.sovryntech.com. That's the URL you can use. You're going to get a discount with that. You are going to love this. This is email for email's sake. This company does nothing more. Just email, and they do it right. All the latest security technologies. You want to log into your account with your YubiKey? You can do that. Fastmail has your hookup. Very inexpensive plans. I want you to check it out. You go to fastmail.sovryntech.com. That'll get you the hookup, and it's an honor to have them as a part of Sovryn Tech. Woo! Let's get back to the show.
Shall we play a game?
Woo! All right. We're going to try and have some fun here. Maybe there's one company that's not fucking tracking everything you do. No. Nintendo collects plenty of data. Let's not make any mistake about it, though. They're usually a little more careful about how they talk about that. I remember Doug Bowser's little flub about, oh yeah, we know every time that you're in handheld mode and with your Switch. But anyway, Nintendo, it's the company that, in my opinion, has put more smiles on faces than, frankly, any other company in history. So, I'm always got that soft spot in my heart for them. And they had, just this past week, they had what they call a Nintendo Direct. This would have been on Tuesday, and it was early in the, very early in the morning. I want to say they launched it at like 10 a.m. Eastern. And their Nintendo Directs, I mean, this is an interesting thing. We're going to talk about video games, obviously, the segment. Their Nintendo Directs, a big thing in the gaming industry used to be what they called the Electronics, Entertainment Expo, E3, as it would get known because of the three E's. And, there's others like the Tokyo Game Show. I mean, there's been many over the past, frankly, since the late 80s. And really, partly due to the internet, but really, Nintendo has gotten to the point where they don't need to appear at any of these gaming shows, conferences ever again. They completely dominate their field in a very real way. Granted, yes, Sony and Xbox can kind of do the same thing, and they have their own versions of directs that they can do, but usually they'll still show up at E3 and other places. But in many ways, a lot of those, gaming conferences, some of which during the pandemic didn't even happen, but a lot of those have become platforms more for gaming publishers and not so much, any of the big three console developers. But Nintendo really, they just, for 24 to 48 hours at least, when they announce a direct or when they're going to have a direct, and they don't have to plan it ahead of time or anything. They'll just tell you, yeah, we're having one tomorrow. See you there. And they dominate communications for, again, 24, 48 hours. They just dominate. That's what everybody's talking about. It's frankly remarkable. Even I don't care to watch Apple shows anymore, or Google show, like I/O or anything like that. I still do for Sovryn Tech purposes, but I don't care to watch any of those, not with the passion that maybe I did, 10 years ago. But boy, a Nintendo Direct, I'm fucking there. And I'm watching it live. And this was an exciting one. So the September 2022 Nintendo Direct, we're going to get into a review of it. There were so many. This was over 40 minutes. There were, almost, depending upon how you count them, over 40 games. You're talking about potentially a game a minute that they were discussing. There's no way that I'm going to break down all 40 games here. Frankly, for me personally, there aren't even that many that were that interesting. Not to say that there weren't interesting things discussed. But I want to get into some of the exciting things that they did announce. Of course, the biggest announcement was the official launch date, which I'm sure is still subject to change, but the official launch date for Breath of the Wild 2, along with the actual name of the game, which is, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. That is going to be Breath of the Wild 2. And, when that comes out, and the date is, my birthday. What a gift. May 12th, 2023, when that comes out. That, talk about like dominating communications mediums. I mean, it's over. Like, that's all anybody's going to fucking talk about. And frankly, Xbox or Microsoft and Sony should be counting their blessings that they know what 2 or 3 months to just not bother doing anything during. You know what I mean? Like, from May 12th to, frankly, the beginning of May, really from now till then, but from the beginning of May till, maybe even end of summer, just don't release anything because everybody's just going to be playing this fucker. And I mean, they gave us a little bit of a longer trailer, not much, but all it has to do is mimic that style of gameplay and give new story and, add in a couple of new abilities or new vehicles, shall we say, for Link to take advantage of within the game. And it's going to do what it does. I mean, it's Zelda. That's it. That leads me, actually, speaking of Zelda, that leads me to what I consider to be the actual disappointment. And I had hopes. Like, I didn't need to know, like when Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out. I know it's coming, and when it comes out, it doesn't need marketing. It doesn't need anything. It's just, everybody's going to be talking about it. It's just going to dominate. But what I really wanted to come out of this was the announcement of remakes of Wind Waker HD from the Wii U era, which of course originally also came from GameCube, and Twilight Princess. That's what I really wanted, because once you get those on Switch, you essentially have just about, I mean, minus something, for the Game Boy series, or Game Boy family, I should say, you essentially have like every major Zelda game on the Switch. And that is awesome, to have that all on one console, to be able to go through that much gaming greatness all at once. So I was a little disappointed in that. So I want to be clear, this wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Also, we're still delayed on the Advance War reboots or remakes, which those I was super excited about from a Nintendo Direct over a year ago now. And it's been constantly delayed. Nintendo's not saying why. Maybe they just have to make so much money off of those to justify the remakes that they can't have anything else coming out in between. I don't get their logic here. But anyway, that was, I mean, the big news for many was just coming out. What is the name of Breath of the Wild 2? What is the release date? And then, for me, the big disappointment was the fact that we did not get, more Zelda games, at the very least re-releases. Or just remasters. I don't need remakes. Just remasters would have been awesome, and it didn't happen. I guess other big news, Pikmin 4, which had been kind of rumored for many years that was going to happen. I mean, they had almost nothing on it. Like, they showed a couple screenshots. Sure, Miyamoto-san came out and talked about it, which is always great to see him. That guy just is always smiling. That was great. But, Pikmin is what it is. It's a cute version of an RTS. And if you're into that, I'm sure it's exciting. But they really didn't show much. I thought that was kind of weird, why they felt like they needed to talk about that. They would have done much better to have brought up Metroid Prime 4, perhaps, and showed some footage from that. But again, that's another thing. We're still not getting anything about that. Though we are finally, of course, getting Bayonetta 3, which was a subject in, within this as well. For me, again, there was a lot of JRPG stuff. It's insane to think about, and really stop and think about this. How many fucking games Square Enix is putting out just on the Switch in the next year? I mean, there's got to be over 20 games. This is crazy when you think about the fact that, like, Squaresoft, particularly back in the day, I mean, you were lucky if you got a game a year out of those guys. Because they do their big epics with Final Fantasy and all that. And I don't know. I worry about a quantity over quality situation here. But the best thing I can think is that just they've been developing these games for many, many years, and now they're just all happen to be able to come out at once. That's the only thing I can imagine, because they don't even really have the manpower to have this much out there. But we are getting Octopath Traveler 2. I don't think it was a surprise to anybody, but that's pretty exciting. What was a surprise for many, even though there had been plenty of leaks and rumors coming on around it, is that GoldenEye as in the N64 GoldenEye, is coming to Nintendo Switch, and particularly to Switch Online to play. I haven't gotten a whole ton of clarity because it's also coming to Xbox and Xbox Live. I haven't gotten a whole ton of clarity on if you're going to, because Switch can't do 4K, but for Xbox it's going to be a 4K remaster. I don't know what exact version we're getting for and how this is going to work. If it's part of the expansion pack for Switch Online that we're going to get with 007. That's kind of weird because you might be getting an inferior version, but are people ultimately going to care? Not really. I get the argument and I've even heard it recently. Some people are like, have you played GoldenEye recently? The game just doesn't hold up. And honestly, I could just turn right here in the studio and, oh no, actually Ellen's not right behind me. No, she's here. She's coming up the stairs. Captain on deck. You just recently replayed GoldenEye on the N64.
I beat it.
You beat it. How does it? Doesn't that game hold up?
Oh, fuck yeah.
Yes, fuck yeah. It's tons of fun. Exactly. So I don't know what people are talking about with that. Do you have any idea what the hell people are thinking with that? Do you have a theory?
Maybe it's the resolution, but I love the black faces.
Yeah, maybe it's the resolution, right? The graphics just don't look good. And it is kind of a primitive FPS compared to like, Halo or something like that, I suppose. But yeah, anyway, Ellen still loved it. And what more of a review do you need? Thank you. Thank you so much, beautiful. Anyway, yeah, so I don't get that. I think that's going to be a great time. And to have, maybe one of the biggest problems is getting people together, 4 people together to sit down and play that thing, which is really where the fun is. The fun isn't even in the game. The fun is in getting people together. I'll admit that, having online multiplayer functionality built into 007 this way, which is what's claimed, I think, even for the Switch, that could make that game a lot more fun again, because you don't have to worry so much about getting people in meat space, even though I still think that's the ultimate way to rock that fucker. Anyway, that was a really big announcement. There were a lot of other N64 games that got announced that are coming to Switch Online. Absolute classics like Pilot Wings 64. That's a necessity. 1080, 1080 degrees. That's a snowboarding game. Phenomenal. Excitebike 64. Getting some Mario Party action. Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2. You're getting just a ton of great action as far as like with Switch Online. At this point, the expansion pack for Switch Online, which I was initially very critical of, is now starting to show its value. I've been impressed with even a lot of the Genesis games that have come out lately on Switch Online expansion for Genesis. It really is starting to be where, okay, the money that you put down for that, now it's worth it. At first, it certainly wasn't. Here's another one that I thought was, there's 2 that got talked about that I don't feel like enough people are talking about that they should be, that are actually, for me, really the most exciting games to get announced. And that would be, I guess I'll start with this one. That would be Rune Factory 3. It's a remake, so it's Rune Factory 3 Special. The Rune Factory series is kind of like Monster Hunter or Final Fantasy with a dating sim built into it. And kind of a farming sim as well. It's really, in many ways, like a full-on lifestyle sim, but that plays in a more Final Fantasy fashion or a Monster Hunter fashion. I love these games. Rune Factory 4, I've played a ton on 3DS. Rune Factory 3, I understand where a lot of people feel that's actually the better game. Rune Factory 5 just came out for Switch as a new game, but the reviews for that were I haven't had the chance to play it, but the reviews for that were admittedly shaky. So remastering and re-releasing Rune Factory 3, I think is a winning option. And if you've never played the series, I would honestly wait for this to come out and start with Rune Factory 3, because it's probably the best the series has ever done. So I think it makes sense that they're doing that. I thought that was exciting. The other part that was really exciting for me, the other game, it's actually 3 games. We are getting remakes of, and these are full-on remakes, not just remasters like what came out for the PSP and Vita. Remakes of Front Mission 1, 2, and 3. Front Mission is their kind of turn-based strategy with gigantic mechas, gigantic robots, as the Japanese love, and so do I. These like the storylines, the complexity of the gameplay and everything, I love these. These are really, really hardcore simulators. So I'm jazzed for these. In fact, they might have been next to like GoldenEye and a couple other things. Like, ultimately, these are the ones where, like, okay, if I was going to do a day one buy on any of these games, minus Breath of the Wild 2, or Tears of the Kingdom, as I should say, minus that, the day one buy on this whole list would easily be Front Mission, the Front Mission games. Those are going to be awesome. And I hope they're not really full price, even though they are full on remakes and they could probably justify it. These are going to be a great time. We're getting 1 and 2, I think, before end of the year, and then the third one will come out in 2023. Granted, the remasters that were done for Sony's portable consoles were amazing, and if you've played those, I don't know that these are really going to be worth it, but I love the Front Mission series. It's along with like Armored Core, and so on. You got giant mechas, I'm there. So anyway, it was a great Nintendo Direct, way more positives than negatives. And again, the negatives were very few. There was really a lot here to enjoy. The only negatives, like I said, are what wasn't there. And then things that it was interesting to hear Nintendo say, like, hey, okay, we're going to put out this DLC for this game, but we need a little more time to get it right. I was amazed for them to say that in the middle of a Direct, but that's just how confident of a company they are right now. And I guess ultimately I'm glad that they have that confidence. So the September 2022 Nintendo Direct, if you want to watch the whole thing, I put a link in the show notes for it, and we'll be right back with more Sovryn Tech. Game on, everybody.
Journey into the far reaches of aquaspace.
Attention, security brief.
Brace for impact. Seal outer doors. Rig for collision.
Launch countermeasures.
From Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment Inc. and Universal Television comes a journey into the future and beneath the sea. Roy Scheider stars in Sequest DSV.
You can watch Sequest by downloading it from your favorite torrent site or getting it on glorious DVD. For beneath the surface lies the future.
Come on!
Album of the Week.
It is time for Album of the Week, where we get to have get to kick back and listen to some music. Well, no, I don't play it on the show, but you get to go out there and find it. And you know what? Like, there was a time where I guess this segment might not have, even though it's a very popular segment, one of the most popular segments Sovryn Tech has ever done. It's why it keeps coming back. There was a time where maybe this was this is sort of an impractical segment to do, because you'd have to buy like a new album every week. Not to say that there isn't always great music from somewhere coming out every week. And there is. Actually, there's a lot of it. If you go outside of America, there's tons of great new music out there, especially in the metal scene. But now, you know what? Most people, and, as Sovryn Tech being, on Anchor, like this, I guess, not a surprise. Most people have Spotify or Apple Music or whatever, or Pandora, or, something that they stream from. And you kind of have access to just about everything, unless it's something that's like rare and, genuinely amazing. Well, no need to get into ribbing there. But now you don't have to buy, the album. It'd be nice if you did, but you don't have to. And this album of the week was a bit of a surprise, and something that I just so happened to get uploaded onto Plex, and tried it out totally on a lark. And it is, I still can't find out how to pronounce this. I've tried to find how to pronounce this name. It is the Erinyes. It's Erinyes. And it is a band. It's 3 gals. It's a metal band, pretty much. And they, kind of more of a power metal type. They got a deal through Frontiers, which great. Frontiers, Music SRL, are probably regularly churning out some of the best music out there right now. Of course, it's an Italian record company. But I mean, music's in English, folks. Like, I mean, they're doing deals with, some of the biggest acts in history. And I mean, really, if I see that an album that comes out in a week is published by like Napalm Records or Cleopatra even, or, or again, Frontiers, Frontiers SRL, I'm going to give it a shot. unless I know it's death metal, then that's just not exactly my thing. I don't have anything really against it. It's just not my... I have very limited time to get shit into my ears, and I got to spend time on what, like I know I'm going to enjoy more and will probably uplift me. And that's really it. This album, the Erinyes, and it's a self-titled album from 2022, just came out last week in September of 2022, is pretty uplifting stuff, pretty deep stuff as well. Like there's some real emotional, heartfelt things, and there's some great harmonies from these three gals, but some great epicness as well within that. So if you're a power metal fan, this is something you're really going to enjoy, but it has, there's a bit of a softer touch to it that I really, really liked. And I would love to see this act, in concert. Because, when there's just certain bands that you can think about, especially like some of like those Viking bands and whatever. There's some bands that you can think of where, you go to the concert and it's like you're going to a ritual. And I can imagine this being such a case. They kind of remind me, with a little less synth, they remind me of like Amberian Dawn, which I'm a big fan of that group. You're really in for a treat with this. It opens right up, like really positive energy, because it just opens right up with this like 1 minute or 2 minute opening track, getting you ready for the top track, which is Drown the Flame, that just constantly repeats, life needs love, life is love. It's beautiful. What a great message, to get out there. And especially when you get a nice hard rock edge on it. I mean, not that the opener has that, but throughout the whole thing, there's some slow songs, but some of them are like I said, really uplifting shit. I dig it. So anyway, the Erinyes, I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but link is in the show notes, or at least the spelling, I should say, not the link, but the spelling is in the show notes if you want to check it out. But I really, really recommend that you do, if you can appreciate that kind of metal. Anyway, that's it for your album of the week. We got a lot more to talk about, and let's get to it. I'll see you after the break.
From Big Finish Productions, Blake 7, The Classic Audio Adventures.
I'm taking Liberator in on manual. We'll be in teleport range in 2 minutes.
What the hell was that?
Information. Liberator has been attacked.
You don't say.
Put up the force wall.
Confirm.
Message to all ground commanders. Initiate the final phase. Let's crush these rebels once and for all.
My name is Avon. Kerr Avon.
Kerr Avon.
Our hostage arrives, which you may be unnecessary.
As a hostage, it's nice to be superfluous.
You can go to Blake7.com to find more of the new adventures of one of science fiction's greatest masterpieces, Blake 7, at Blake7.com.
The Ancient and the Strange.
Woo, time for the new segment, The Ancient and the Strange. And, I got so much, and really I'm honored by this, I got so much positive feedback to what I did was, I actually read from the first issue of the Sovryn Technica newsletter, I read the entirety of my spirituality section and discussed, for the purposes of this segment going forward into the future, what gets meant when terms like mystical, divine, spirituality, religion, and so on, what do these terms mean? How should they be defined? What is getting talked about here? Because again, we're going to talk about the ancient and the strange, and esotericism is going to come up, folks. I got tremendous response from that, and I did not really see any negativity. This week, because of the response, I want to follow it up with reading the next from issue number 2 of the Sovryn Technica newsletter. I want to read the next segment, segment that I wrote for the Sovryn Technica newsletter of spirituality. And this is one that is ultimately all about books, which books, let us be clear here, are a technology. I know we like to think of, when we say technology, we just like to think of electronics. That is a misnomer. Okay. Books in themselves are a technology, and I want to talk about that and the importance of that. And I'm not going to do every spirituality section, reading from every spirituality section of the Sovryn Technica newsletter, because there are things that I write up like on naturism and others that, well, it's just not a fit here. It might fit as something separate, as like a separate audio, a separate podcast of a type, but it would not fit in here. But I think that this conversation around books, and to expand a little bit more, because like the first 3 or 4 or 5 issues of the Sovryn Technica newsletter, I was laying the groundwork for this conversation around the esoteric, the occult, and mysticism and ultimately spirituality. I think it makes sense to kind of like lay out that groundwork for a little bit, and then we can really get into talking about the ancient and the strange, and you're going to have a foundation of where I'm coming from when I talk about these subjects. And we're going to have fun with these subjects, ancient tech, strange, like things that just the unexplained, as it were, as William Shatner might talk about, or the In Search Of that Leonard Nimoy would talk about, things in that flavor. But you need to know where I am coming from, and I want to be upfront and honest with you on all of that. So it's another reason that I want to, really, again, read that groundwork from the spirituality section. And I hope it entices you also to become a subscriber of the Sovryn Technica newsletter. I won't deny that. But ultimately, again, it is about laying that foundation of what we're going to talk about in this segment going forward, because this segment's going to be a part of Sovryn Tech for a very long time, if not forever. So here we go from the issue 2 of the Sovryn Technica newsletter, the spirituality section, discussing books. The year 70 CE. The place, Jerusalem. The situation, a not-so-little temple is about to be destroyed by the Roman Empire, who had just retaken the ancient city of Jerusalem, marking the end of the First Jewish-Roman War that started in 66 CE. It's a bloody conflict that leaves the Jews of that time without a home, and more importantly to the freshly conquered people, without a central place of worship, Herod's Temple, or more popularly known as the Second Temple. For ancient peoples, this is a double travesty. Not only losing the autonomy of your claimed ancestral homeland, but also losing the site and center of your religious observance as a people. The effect of the Roman destruction of the Second Temple is incalculable on the Jewish people of the 1st century CE. An identity as an ethnicity and as a religion was for all intents and purposes destroyed. But somehow the Jews go on, to this very day, and not a single Roman in sight. In the 21st century, many people don't realize just how intertwined ancient peoples were with their land and their land with their religion. Sure, patriotism is a thing today. Sadly, I'd hoped it would have gone out of fashion by now. But patriotism is an argument over imaginary lines like borders that can and do change often. No, what I'm talking about is an inextricable link between a populace, their faith, and the very land they exist upon and have done so for, at least, centuries. Perhaps the most modern example to understand would be the Samoans of Hawaii. They are ethnically distinct, they have ancient belief systems, and part of that belief system is that the Hawaiian Islands literally have a spiritual energy to them called mana that powers them as a people, but can only come from those specific islands, or a few others like in French Polynesia. It's a relationship between a people, the divine, and land. The Jews in the 1st century CE, before and after, had that same relationship with Jerusalem. Note, whether or not Jerusalem is the actual ancestral homeland is a matter of debate that I won't get into here, but I have discussed it many times on Sovryn Tech, as well as Wednesday Q&A episodes for subscribers to my Patreon. End note. So without their temple to sacrifice at and worship properly from, and not having control of their holy land, how is it that the Jews have survived to today? Time and again throughout history, a similar event where an ancient civilization loses its homeland and its sites of religious significance happens, and they disappear, and with any luck are at least relegated to the history books. But why didn't the Jews disappear? Answer? Books. Okay, honestly, there's never only one answer to big questions upon the stage of history, but this is a pretty significant part of it that Jews themselves recognize. When the Romans were coming, when they ransacked all that the Jews held dear outside of their families and their God, they looked at all their culture and all of their secrets, everything that made them distinct, and they wrote that shit down. It started with the Mishnah, a text that compiled what Jews called the Oral Torah, a companion to the written Torah, that being the 5 books of Moses. Then came the Tosefta, then the 2 Talmuds, the Behir, Sefer Yetzirah, the Zohar, and so on. They wrote it all down, cherished those books as if they were a living, sapient thing, and protected them with their very lives. You see, the Jews couldn't disappear or be forgotten. They could never be wiped out, because they had their books. Books that were far more than stories. They were instructional, culturally relevant, and gave their readers commentary on not just the past, but the present and future, and even gave direct, actionable insights. Am I saying these books are the whole truth and nothing but the truth? No, not at all, but there is much truth within them, and that's the second half of why these particular books mattered. They weren't just full of fairy tales. Again, because there was truth in these books, because what was in these books was applicable and practical, they survived. No people that have gone through what the Jews have gone through would defend books to the death if the pragmatic power of those books wasn't on display in their lives. That's why even when other populations have had their own holy books, they still disappeared. These supposed holy books had little to nothing to teach what allowed you to engage the universe around you, and more importantly, the universe within you. Spirituality can be a deeply personal thing, altering and empowering that inner universe. But you can also see it have an effect on the universe around you, even if it's just how you see the universe. As we continue to explore spirituality in this segment of the Sovryn Technica newsletter, it's important that you test your theories and beliefs and do what you can to preserve them. And while we can't all put our theories and beliefs to the test of thousands of years as the Jews have, we can at least try to expand and preserve our truths, even if it's just to ourselves. We'll be exploring not just theory here, but also actionable aspects of spirituality, and I think it very worthwhile to document your journey. Consider writing in a journal, or doing a podcast or audio logs of what you experience and think, or even make videos if you like. You never have to share them with anyone else, but keeping a record of your journey into spirituality and your outer and inner universe is one way that you can achieve immortality, just like those dusty old Hebrew books. And that is the spirituality segment from issue 2 of the Sovryn Technica newsletter. This is such an important point to bring up, and it is the ultimate point. I'm not talking about, spirituality as real estate or anything along those lines. That was not the purpose of that write-up. The purpose of that was to highlight the importance of documenting what you experience, what you learn going forward. And it's a very easy thing to do. I mean, I listed off a bunch of ways to go about that. But let's always appreciate the book for what it is. The book that doesn't require electricity. The book that doesn't need a battery. The book that you can hold in your hand, open it up at any point, and it could stand the test of time. And a properly made book really can last for hundreds of years, if not much more. I mean, we know we have them that are that old. It's a powerful thing. And we do well with the technology that we do have to in some way document our experiences, especially when it comes to encountering, shall we say, the ancient and the strange. I'll be right back with more Sovryn Tech.
The most incredible television event ever, as you join the crew of Battlestar Galactica.
Right here, you creepy crawly. I have led the entire human race to ruin.
The last of mankind, fighting for life in a hostile galaxy.
Most of us are dead.
Alone, with only one hope, Battlestar Galactica and her crew.
There is no other destination.
Commander Adama, Captain Apollo, the intrepid Starbuck, and the dazzling Athena, searching for a new and peaceful world.
May as well live for today. We might not have many left. Let the attack begin.
A new age of high adventure, Battlestar Galactica.
The Golden Stallion doing whatever he wants to do. The Climax.
Woo, it is time for the climax where I get to talk about whatever I want to talk about. And I don't want to necessarily spend a whole ton of time on this one, but I want to talk about a movie series. I originally actually planned to talk about this during the Wednesday Q&A for patrons only. Again, just go to patreon.com/sovereigntech to get your hookup for that. I originally planned on talking about it there because I will do on the Q&As, at the end of each Q&A, I will usually do a movie of the week. And I was going to bring this up. But I didn't get that because we ended up going almost 2 hours, frankly, talking about a bunch of biblical shit. Even though there was tech in there and other things. I wanted to get this out there because some of this stuff was kind of mind-blowing to me. And so, anyway, Mrs. Sovryn and I, we were recently rewatching one of my favorite film franchises, that being the Underworld series. Don't laugh. I'm not kidding. I think these movies are fantastic. And it's not only because J. Michael Straczynski helped co-write some of them. I am saying, like these movies are genuinely great for many reasons. I mean, yes, I like vampire media in general anyway, as long as it's not Twilight or The Vampire Diaries. But in general, I like vampire media. And, you know, it's just, this is a franchise, much like Resident Evil. Not so much that it's like avant-garde like Resident Evil is, but in its cool factor. And, you know, after watching all 5 of these movies, you know, which started in 2003 and culminated in 2016, you know, I mean, you have Underworld, then Underworld Evolution, then Underworld Rise of the Lycans, Underworld Awakening, and then Underworld Blood Wars. And, you know, there's a little anime and other things in between that, and even a PS2 game, which I actually own a hard copy of. But anyway, after watching them, like, I was instantly thinking, wow, I hope they're going to make another one of these. And I wanted to look into that, you know. And in my digging around on that, there has been, you know, since the last movie came out, Blood Wars, which I love that movie. It's a little, I get it. Like, the editing is really fast paced. There must have been some edict from on high, that being Sony, to say, hey, you can't make these movies longer than an hour and a half. And I don't know what the hell the logic was behind that, but there's plenty of story and exploration and exposition in these movies where they could do 2.5 hours easy. And I don't know why they didn't, but whatever. Blood Wars brings so much more into the mythos of these, you know, the mythology of this series. It's a shame they didn't get to, like, really sit with it in the movie and explore it more. But anyway, so, you know, I had essentially, like, said, I mean, Ellen and I, we watched the Resident Evil series of films, which I love those. Yeah, I know they're nothing like the game. It doesn't matter. They're great movies on their own. Live with it. So, you know, like, I mean, I just like these movies as is. But I'd kind of written them off in that Kate Beckinsale, who's, you know, the lead character playing Celine, she had said back when Blood Wars came out, about a year after Blood Wars came out, she basically said, yeah, I'm never going to do those again. But then I guess a couple of years ago, she actually said, oh no, I'd do it again. I'd get back into Underworld. So maybe that's going to end up happening. But I looked into it. It doesn't sound like there were any plans for a sequel film anyway, but there were plans for a TV series. Problem is the TV series, like, the producers came right out and said, yeah, we're looking to do, and apparently it's still somewhat active, even though this has been announced like in 2019. They said, yeah, we're going to do an Underworld TV series, but it's not going to be anything like the movies. And of course, my response to that is, well, then why fucking do it? Like, if you're making it because there's an audience, why make something that's not like the movies? And it's a shame too, because, like, what is it going to be like? Like, the style of the Underworld series is so varied. You know, at first they're copying The Matrix, which I think is a fine thing because The Matrix had such a cool style. Yeah, keep it coming. Just like, am I going to complain that the Max Payne games had bullet time in them? Fuck no. That's really cool. You know, just Underworld had a blue hue to the camera instead of a green hue. You know, like, I have no complaints about that. Just like, are you going to make a clone of Star Trek? Why would I complain about that? As long as it's actually going to be like a proper clone and get, you know, some of the high notes right. And I kind of think that Underworld did similarly with, you know, with its rendition, shall we say, of the Matrix styling, not necessarily the storytelling, but the styling. It's part of what I love about it. It's like the Matrix light. It's so cool. Anyway, like there are so many different styles. Like you have the third movie with Rise of the Lycans where it's all medieval, you know, and you could have gone with the medieval series. Why would that be different than the Underworld movies? Or unfortunately even though Blood Wars, I do enjoy the film, I recognize that it was copying Game of Thrones. It did certainly, you know, it's not hard to do better than Game of Thrones since it's such a piece of shit. And I think Blood Wars succeeded in that. So, you know, Underworld can take on different styles, and it already took on so many. I just don't see why they'd want to change that. But whatever, that's irregardless. What really blew me away here, okay, because I think I already talked about what made these movies great, especially if you're into vampires. You're just in for such a treat. What really got me intrigued was, again, some of the things that were supposed to be done with the Underworld series that never happened. And this has only come out in the past couple of years. And I mean, we're talking like in 2021. I was blown away by two things. One is, and this will lead to the second thing. One is that there was supposed to be a crossover with the Blade movies, as in Wesley Snipes' Blade. That would have been awesome. Huge fan of that whole trilogy. Great movies. But not only that, like I'm thinking like, okay, that's kind of cool. But then is that bringing Underworld into the Marvel universe? Well, that's what blew my mind. Okay, I'll talk about that in a second. Because they were also going to do a crossover with the Resident Evil series, which in my opinion would have been amazing. Because, I mean, there you've got it. You have two characters, you know, Celine and Alice, that, you know, are both kick-ass in their own right. I think that would have been a phenomenal film. And it would have fit because, you know, zombies, vampires, come on. You know, and Lycans, sure. Werewolves, yeah, let's do it. So it's a shame that didn't happen. Yeah, there's the I, Frankenstein crossover. I kind of knew about that I, Frankenstein, which most people don't even remember that movie from 2014. I remember, like, there was supposed to be, in fact, even in, like, the comic, Celine was supposed to be in that. But that movie was, like, in the Underworld universe, which, like, I'm aware of that. But speaking of comic books, this is what blew my mind. I had no idea that the creator of the Underworld series actually based Kate Beckinsale's character of Celine on Celine the Mutant from X-Men, who she's like the oldest living being on the planet, on Earth. Great character, kind of the antithesis to Emma Frost, kind of the antithesis to the White Queen in a way. She dresses more like the Black Queen and has even been called that. You know, there's the time where she took over Nova Roma and anything. Great character. I don't really recall her being like a vampire. I mean, she's a very powerful character for sure. But I guess now it's considered official that Celine of Underworld is the Marvel mutant. And that's how it would have fit with her being in Blade. But like that fact that she's like technically a Marvel character, that blew my mind. And I'm supportive of it because as long as it's not part of the MCU, you know, as long as it's not a part of Disney's Marvel Cinematic Universe, then I'm on board with it. Like, I love Marvel movies outside of the MCU. It's the MCU that I have a problem with. And I guess the only reason that the Blade crossover didn't happen, which would have been fucking epic, the only reason it didn't happen is because, well, here it is. Disney said, oh no, we're going to do our own version of Blade, so we're not going to let a separate Blade movie get made. Go figure. Disney ruins things once again. But that just blew my mind that these are technically Marvel movies. Maybe that's why Straczynski did so well with it. Because I mean, he's written plenty for Marvel. Even though I know he did that Fantastic Four thing and that, but anyway, he's still God. But yeah, that was amazing to me. So if you haven't checked out these movies in a while, like, you can certainly look at them in a new light. And man, if only there was somebody out there who just had a little bit of writing chops to make the fan fiction, even if you just had to change the names a little bit, to make the fan fiction of Underworld X Resident Evil X Blade. Boy, what a story that would be. Who out there has the moxie, has the chutzpah, as my people would say, to do that one? I wonder. Anyway, that's it for this Sovryn Tech. Go check out those movies. You're really in for a great time. Maybe not play the PS2 game, but you can watch the game movie on YouTube if you want. But we'll wrap up this Sovryn Tech with that, and I will see all of you on the other side.